Boom. Okay, there is no doubt that when it comes to key light, power is very, very important. But it's not just power we have to look at when we're getting a key light. If you're making commercial living off it and making money from it, you need power, but you also need something that you can actually transport around. So size and form factor become a very, very critical thing. And what I want to do today is actually want to take a look here at this iFootage Anglerfish SL1 400 BNS. Now, this is a really, really interesting light in the fact that it's 400 watts, it's bi-color, and it sits in that middle place that's very, very intriguing. It's above, like, say, an Aperture 300X or an Amaran 300C, but it's not as powerful as, they say, a 600 watt light. And this really, really fits a great niche. And I wish more people out there were making 400 watt lights, because I often find when I'm doing commercial work, 300 is just not enough to overpower lights and windows. And 600, for most of my stuff, it's just way overkill. It's hard to get those big lights in my car. And I just wanted a light that could pack a great form factor and a bunch of power. And this 400 BNS really does a lot of that. Now, before I get into the details of this 400 BNS, I do want to take a look at just how practical it is to have this 400 watts of power and let you see an extreme example of lighting to let you see just how much power is packed into this little light. Okay, so here I am. I brought myself in what I would consider a very, very extreme condition to demonstrate just how much power you can get out of this iFootage 400 BNS. Now, one thing about this, let's look at this situation. I am actually in a terribly lit situation. I have a super bright background that I want to get exposed for, and if you'll notice, the sun is literally streaming right into the garage, blasting everything, and I need to have a light that's strong enough to overpower and give me a good fill. And that's really where you get the full power of this 400 BNS. And that's really what I want to talk about when you're thinking about getting a light like this, especially if you're looking for something like interviews. You're probably not going to put yourself in an extreme situation like this, but there are two major advantages that you can have that give you good tools if you're looking for a good interview key light. The first one is just going to be simply power. As you can see, I've got a hugely blown out background behind me, and I'm able to expose for it because I'm able to get enough punch and power from this 400 BNS. That is going to be very important. You're probably not going to be in a situation where you're directly having the sun shining literally in the lens to get this, but you are going to have windows, you're going to have something like this. You want a light that if you're in a tight space, you can maybe get in there and have enough punch from your key to make sure the windows are properly exposed. And because this is a situation you're going to come across in almost every interview you ever do, this gives you the flexibility to decide how much blowout you want in those windows. Maybe a little bit, maybe a lot, but this power of a light like this gives you that flexibility. Now, there's another really practical component of having this much power in a key light. It's not just about overpowering the background. It's actually going to be in giving you the flexibility to diffuse your light, because let's be honest, you're probably not going to be shooting in an extreme environment like this. Most of the time we do interviews, the lighting is going to be more controlled kind of by default. But what we want to do is we want to soften it and silk it. And having power like this gives you room to make a book light or add extra layers of diffusion to give you a better lighting source. So for instance, if I wanted to take this, right now I have a 5-foot softbox, I have 2 layers of silk, and I can do a grid, and if I'm in a more controlled environment, I'm gonna have more than enough space to diffuse it. The other thing I wanna do, let's say I wanna take, like, I'm gonna grab this right here, maybe I wanna put even one more silk in front of it. I can put that there in front of the light, and this light is powerful enough that in a more controlled environment, it gives me the power to get through all those diffusion sources, giving me flexibility. And that's really what you want in a light like this, is you just want the resource to have the tools that you need, which is what I think that power that comes, that 400 watts of power you get from this 400 BNS and the bi-color flexibility come from it, is a really, really powerful tool. Really something you should consider about as one of the key components you will need in a key light that's going to last you for a couple years. Okay, so as you can see, that was an absolutely extreme example of lighting with the sun literally hitting right into the lens. I was being backlit by the sun, and this 400 BNS had enough output, even at that situation, to go through double diffusion softbox and still expose me and keep the background from completely obliterating. So the power of this is very, very awesome. And what I've discovered just from practically using this is that when I compare this to things using like my Aperture 300Xs or even the Amaran 300C, the output of this was so much more. It really gave me the flexibility. And I often found when I'm using like the 300 watt lights, I was always just under what I needed to be. I felt like I was always compromising. And this little 400 watt bicolor, giving me total color flexibility, really gives me a ton of output, especially if I'm at 5600K. And just to kind of give you an idea of, if you're looking at what the big boys kind of run, is this 400 BNS, when you have a reflector on it, it puts out 52,500 lumens if you have a reflector at 3 feet. Now compare that with an Aperture 300X, which is 20,500, and even the Amaran 300C, which is 26,580. So this thing really, really kicks out a lot of output. Now the first thing I want to talk about, because this is actually just as important for me as size, before I get into the details of this, I do want to talk about form function of this light. And one thing that I think really needs to be pointed out is that this is a 400 watt light. It is more powerful than your classic 300s, but the form factor is actually not that big. This is much, much smaller than some of the bigger lights you get. Like if you say get a 600 watt light. And what I've discovered is someone that does a lot of traveling around in a Honda Civic and throwing all my stuff in there, I needed a light that I could put in a kit and make it really, really easy. And what I was running into with the bigger lights is I just couldn't practically travel with them and put them in my car because they ended up taking up so much space. What I love about this is that this is a very powerful bicolor light, and it's not that big. I can actually put this in a light with other bags. But I just did a trip up in Minnesota, and I was actually able to fly with this in a suitcase with my other things and get up there and have a really, really powerful light. So I think if you're doing commercial work like this, it's really important to think about the practical situations of that, because it's a really great form factor and it just feels solid. It's a good metal. I felt very comfortable putting this in a bag and checking this in an airplane. It stood up great. So the form factor and build factor of this is really, really important. I think it's an important consideration, almost as important as the power output, because you got to have that practical component to it. Now there is one other really important factor, because this 400 BNS I really see is designed to be a key light specifically for interview situations and other kind of design things like that. And what you really want in a situation like that is you want to make sure you're finding a light that's got really good color accuracy. And one thing about iFootage that they just take great pride in, and as someone now that I've gotten a chance to shoot some interviews with it, they just have very, very good color accuracy, and they actually call it skin tone magic, because what these lights do is they're set up to really highlight the natural spectrum lighting. And that kind of keeps the lights from getting any kind of unnatural color bias on skin. So they're very, very good for skin tones. And this is really an important thing, because most of the time I'm using a light like this, I'm actually using it as a key light, and I want my skin tones to be good. I don't want to have any weird kind of spikes in there. Now, as far as the form factor goes, besides the size and the ruggability, there are a couple things about it that are important to know. The first thing is that this is a Bowens mount, which means that you can use all of your Bowens mount accessories on this with no problem, which is very, very important for me. I don't want a light, honestly, if it doesn't have Bowens mount accessories that you can put on the front. The other thing is that it's got this kind of nice yoke. It's a big light. You want to have a yoke that you can do. It's got a very kind of easy to operate thing. You will notice how I'll flip it around. It's got this handle here on the side. It's not the biggest handle I've ever come. I've definitely come across bigger ones, but I found it was it was strong. It fit really, really well. And I was able to easily put a 5-foot softbox on this, and this yoke held up with no problem. So I felt the build quality of this was really, really nice. And if you look on the back of the light right here, we do have a nice locking pin here that lets us get our light in and out, which is a really nice feature. Now, one thing I really like about this as well is to keep the light small and compact. The ballast box is separate from the light. This is really, really nice because it keeps the light way lighter, right? So you can put it up on C-stands, combo stands. You know you got less weight up top. And it's just nice having the ballast box that hangs down and lets you get all the controls you need at a much lower level than you would if it was attached to the light. Now the ballast box itself is very quiet. It's got a fan in there, but it has not affected any sound things. It actually runs so quiet, I can't even really hear it. So it is on there. Now the ballast box is set up pretty straightforward. This is a bicolor light, which means you can go over from 2700K up to 6500K. So it pretty much covers all the ranges you need. One thing I like about it is it's got, 2 dimming switch, one for dimming and it's got one for color temperature, but it's got a quick set so you can dial it in exactly what you want. But if you want to, you can hit the button and cycle through. And it's even nice if you come here and do it for the colors. You can see I can get the colors and it's just cycling through from 27, 32, 43, 55, and then up to the top. So I get a nice little level. If you just want to quickly cycle through the colors, you can just hit a button right there and you're good to go. So it's a very simple, straightforward box. You can sit there and do FX. You have a menu button. You can get your Bluetooth. And if you look at the top here, it's actually got a locking pin for your power distribution, which is really nice. And it's got a power button, and it's got a DMX pin, which is having a DMX option on any light is something that I think is just hugely appreciated, because you're not going to need a DMX all the time, but there are going to be situations when you're in more professional applications that it's just nice having the ability to plug this into DMX box and know you've got that future kind of proofing for the lights. Now, in addition to the control box, you can do app control, which is always appreciated. There is a Lumen app, and it's a pretty straightforward app. You can sit there, set all your things. You can control the intensity. You can now come in here. You can see all the different effects now that you can do: lightning, paparazzi, pulsing, fireworks, television, you name it. Or you can come back to the CCT, or it actually has a microphone in there, so you can see this is now reacting to my voice. Boom, boom, boom. Kind of a nice feature to have. And, you know, then you're going to come back here to the CCT, and then you can actually come here and actually have things like if you want to go straight up to, say, a white halogen lamp, you can do that. It's got some quick settings for that, or of course you can do the intensity or dial in exactly the color temperature that you want. So it gives you a lot of good options here for what you might want to do for any kind of app situation. Now, I do want to talk about pricing real quick too, because I think it's important when you're looking at a light like this. This thing has incredible accuracy, and this is $699 versus $999 that you get for the Aperture 300X. So you basically have a situation that this thing comes in $300 in an Aperture 300X, and it has a lot more power output that I've discovered. Even an Amaran 300C, which is cheaper than this, it's $569 versus $699, that has way less power, which becomes a critical thing when you're out there trying to shoot. And if you need something that's like really powerful, like a 600X, well, this is $700 versus $2,000 for an Aperture 600X. So this 400 BNS really walks a fine line of giving you great power, a really, really compact form factor at a fantastic price. And that's really what I think is hard to beat on this light. It's just the price and the power options you get for this as a bicolor light. Now, in addition to this is a great key light, because it is a Bowens mount, iFootage actually makes another accessory that I do think is worth mentioning, and that is they have a 40-degree Bowens projector lens. I'm gonna pop that out there. And what I love here is you can see it comes in this little case right here, and I just love, it's kind of cloth, it's still sturdy, but I love how small this is. And one thing, if you are a shooter out there, you will quickly discover how important it is to have a projector lens for your lights. This thing is really, you can see the size of it right here. I'm gonna go and put this out of the way. Now, if you know anything about using a projector spotlight lens on any kind of set, this sort of becomes a hidden weapon of all of us. And what is so great about having a projector is that it allows us to create specific splashes of light and texture and break up boring walls. As a matter of fact, if you look over my shoulder right now, you will see I actually have a spotlight projecting behind me, creating that little spin pattern back over my head. It's one of those things that you use in interviews all the time. And what's really nice is that this is travel ready. So what I'm gonna do, go ahead and pop off this, kind of blind everyone real quick. I'm gonna show you just how easy this thing fits in. So I can sit there, put that in there, and now you'll see I've got that here on my lens. And what's great, this works like a classic projector. I can open this up and do it, and then get shapes and stuff here on my wall. Now, one great thing about a spotlight is it's got these control wedges where you can really create and shape and angle light exactly the way you want it. Now, one thing iFootage does that's fantastic is they give you a ton of different gobos and a little slip-in thing right here. And this is really where I love using these. Not only can they give me a splash of light, but I can take a gobo in there, and you can see I can slip it right in, and they have tons of them here. And just in case you're ever wondering, a gobo looks like this. You literally can slip it right there in your case, and then you just slip it right in, and boom, now you've got a specific shape. And because this is a lens and you can focus it, you can get your shape to be as sharp or blurry out of focus as you want. So having a tool like this as an accent to a light like this, either a spotlight or any of your Bowens mount lights, really just adds a ton of value on commercial sets. In my opinion, it's one of those things that starts really separating your looks from what other people are doing, because it just makes your sets look more dynamic. And one of the good features about this spotlight is because it's only $350, it won't break the bank. It's got a really easy travel case. and a ton of gobo, so you have a lot of creativity there. One thing I would make sure you know about it is that these little wedges in here that come in and slide in, I have discovered they give you a lot of control, but if you bring it in completely closed, you can sometimes see little gaps on that, so just be aware. This isn't a huge thing, but I think it is one of those things that if you need this thing closed down all the way, you may need to just really play with that to get these arms to come in and really close up completely. All right, now whenever I do a review, I always like to point out any rooms of improvement, just so you can kind of go in there and really have all the information to decide if this is something that makes sense for you or not. Now, for me, the big areas that I would say are rooms of improvement for this 400 BNS is I love having the ballast system. Man, I really, really wish there was a V-mount option here on the light itself. This thing is so powerful, I could definitely see wanting to take this maybe outside. And as it stands right now, there's no V-mount option based here on the ballast itself. So it is something to make sure you are aware of. This isn't really a deal breaker because I do see this as such a practical light, and you can't always run stingers, but just be aware if you need something that's outdoorsy and all that stuff, you're not gonna have a V-mount. The other area that I would point out as a room for improvement is going to be the app itself. Now, this thing works completely great with the ballast and everything like that, but I have noticed a couple of times when I've been on set and I've been trying to get the light from across the room with the app, it can just be a little buggy and quirky. I'm always able to get the light and control and get what I want, but I have noticed it's not completely seamless. This is something that I feel like can continue to be addressed in firmware updates, but just be aware that is one other issue with the light. It's not a 100% seamless app as it stands right now. It will work, but sometimes you just got to deal with a little quirk here and there in the app itself. So all in all, my final verdict on this is that I just think this is personally for me a fantastic bicolor key light. This has now become my default #1 key light that I bring on smaller commercial jobs with me because it gives me the power I need, the color accuracy, and the form factor all fits in exactly what I want, making this at $700 a great, great practical light, exactly what I've been looking for to add to my kit. Anyway, guys, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this. Leave me notes and comments down below, and yeah, go out there, keep on shooting, and yeah, I'll talk to you soon.